Danny, I guess somebody knows something you and I don't know. That's why the prices are down. But gold and silver have been strong, are strong, and that's because somebody is worried about something, whether it's currency debasement or war, bankruptcy, who knows what they're worried about, but somebody's worried about something. I own both because I know, I mean, I'm an old peasant, and all of us old peasants know you better have some gold and silver in the closet if something goes wrong. And that's why I hope I'm smart enough to never sell my gold or silver. I hope my kids have it someday, and I hope they don't sell it either.
Guys, my name is Danny, and you're watching Capital Cosm. Today, we have Jim Rogers making his return on the show. Jim, thank you so much for coming back on.
But Danny, I'm delighted to be here. It's nice to see you.
Yeah, likewise. Everyone else is happy to see you as well, Jim. You're a fan favorite amongst us here. Let's just go ahead and dive right in. What is your 40,000 foot view of the markets, the economy? What is taking up your headspace right now? What's top of the radar for you right now?
Well, Danny, I mean, look out the window. Aren't you worried? I mean, everything is great all over the world. Everything is great. I mean, even Japan, which was in a bear market for 35 years, is making all-time highs. China is booming after being hit by the virus and hit by a property bust. No, everybody's having a wonderful time. Well, maybe North Korea is not having a wonderful time, but nearly everybody we know is having a wonderful, wonderful time. And I have found in my life that when everybody's having a wonderful time, you better look out the window and see if something is going to happen that's not good. So I'm looking out the window.
Yeah, we look at the proverbial window, and one of the things that comes screaming at me is this $2,700 gold price that's just shooting higher almost every day now. What exactly is up with that? It doesn't. It seems like there's something off in the system, and gold's trying to warn us about something. What do you think?
Well, I own gold, as you well know. I've never sold any of my gold, which I've had for decades. And if it goes down, I hope I'm smart enough to buy more. If I were buying something today, I would buy silver. I own lots of silver as well. And silver is down 40% or so from its all-time high, while gold is making all-time highs. So if I were buying something today, I would prefer silver. But the real answer to your question is I'm not the only person who knows that there are problems on the horizon. I mean, the US debt is staggering. If you just look at the numbers, and I'm afraid nobody in Washington looks at the numbers, but they're incomprehensible. They can never be paid. I have young daughters. They're going to have huge problems with the US economy and currency in their lifetimes. It's a good time to be an old American. It's not a good time to be a young American because young people are going to have lots of problems. I remember, in 1924, Britain was the richest, most powerful country in the world. 50 years later, it's not a typo, 50 years later, Britain was bankrupt, totally bankrupt. The IMF had to help them pay their bills. So this has happened before. I'm not suggesting when the US is going to have those problems, but I know they're coming. I've read enough of history to know that they're coming, and it's not good. But that doesn't mean, Danny, that right now not everybody's having a good time. Nobody sees any problems on the horizon. There's no war, there's no famine, there's no nothing coming down the road. So I'm
Yeah,
starting to worry.
yeah. Precious metals traders and investors seem to be having a good time with this record high gold price. So does the average stock market trader and investor with new all time highs in the broad market, right? A group of people that aren't having a good time are oil traders. Oil's been lagging behind everything else at around $70 at the time of this recording. Why is it that gold is shooting up, which is typically viewed as a hedge for risk, but the oil price kind of remains defiant, even though you have a potential war with Iran and Israel right around the corner, that has a number of choke points that could go off. The Strait of Hormuz could be shut off. Many different, the oil facilities over there in Iran could be shut off. Many different things could go off, but the oil prices diminished. What's going on there? Do you think?
Well, Danny, I guess somebody knows something you and I don't know. That's why the prices are down. But gold and silver have been strong, are strong, and that's because somebody is worried about something, whether it's currency debasement or war, bankruptcy, who knows what they're worried about, but somebody's worried about something. I own both because I know, I mean, I'm an old peasant, and all of us old peasants know you better have some gold and silver in the closet if something goes wrong. And that's why I hope I'm smart enough to never sell my gold or silver. Well, my kids have it someday, and I hope they don't sell it either. But the world does face, I mean, Danny, war, depression, there are also inflation, there are all sorts of things going on out there that could be very, very disruptive. But at the moment, nobody cares, or everybody says they're not so serious. I hope they're not serious. I don't want to have a war. I don't want to have depression. I don't want to have bankruptcy. I don't want any of that stuff. So let's hope the world's going to be okay. But I'm cautious.
Do you see the war in Ukraine and Russia de-escalating? Relatively speaking, it has seemed to be put on the back burner over the last year or so. Do you see that eventually fizzling away, or in favor of an Iran-Israel war, or are they all kind of interconnected, so to speak?
Well, they're all interconnected. You look back to previous periods in history, what happened was you had a little war over here that nobody paid much attention to, and then another little war over there. People ignored it. And the next thing you knew, oh my gosh, it's on the evening news, and everybody knows about the big war
Mm-hmm.
that's taking place. So, no, history would indicate that the world is sliding towards more war and bigger wars. So, Danny, be worried. I'm worried anyway, because I wish human beings were smart enough to avoid war. But human beings have been having wars for hundreds of years. No matter how smart human beings are, and no matter how much somebody can sit down and say, this is a stupid war, they all say, yeah, it's a stupid war. It'll be over in 6 months. And it never is. So be worried.
Yeah, for sure. This things do appear to be very interconnected. Just recently, you had North Korea sending troops over to fight alongside Russian troops in Ukraine. And to the
Well,
untrained eye, that might seem kind of odd. But to folks like yourself, I mean, obviously, there is this Eastern Bloc that has been formed uh, due to a common enemy in the form of the hegemon here in the West.
Well, I've read the same thing about North Korean troops. I don't know. I have no idea if North Korean troops are there. I have learned in my life that be very cautious because there's a lot of propaganda around,
Mm.
and a lot of it is not accurate. A lot of it is for somebody's own political agenda. So I don't know if they're there or not. I don't know why they would be. It seems foolish, but I'm not North Korea, so I don't know. But the point you're making, the bigger point you're making is yes, that's one of the things, one of many things like that that continue to worry me. And I see people doing more and more foolish things. You and I will say, why would North Korea send troops anywhere? But somebody thinks they're doing it. And if they're doing it, I don't know why, but it's certainly not good for the world. It's not good for them either, even if they think it is.
There appears to be this belief
Korea.
in the American political sphere where you have the two parties, the Democrats and the Republicans. The Republicans are, spearheaded by Trump, and the Republicans believe that they can tamp down on the Ukraine war. They try to come across as an anti-war party, but then by that same token, or on the other side of the coin, they then take that attention over to the Middle East instead. and say we need to bomb Iran, all of this other stuff. The Democratic side, although they do appear to be very war hawkish on Iran, it's not as big of a priority as Russia is. So, do you see this as kind of like a splinter in tactic? So, do you see this as two different tactics, two different groups that have two different ideas or stratagems moving forward? I.e., one group believes that they can win a peer to peer war with a nuclear power like Russia, whereas another group, they may have enough semblance of reality to see the insanity of it, and they may want to target a smaller enemy like Iran in the Middle East, even though Iran is not Iraq, Iran is not Afghanistan, Iran is a much more lethal force than any of these countries we've gone to war with in decades past. But at the same time, you made mention that they were all interconnected. You go to war with one, you're essentially going to war with the entire thing.
Really, you use the right word, the insanity of it. Why why is America, since we're both Americans, why are we getting involved in all of these things? Don't we have better things to do?
Mm.
We have gigantic debts. We can't even keep our bridges proper. Why are we spending all this money going around shooting people we don't even know that have very little effect on us? That's my main question. Now, having said that, yes, okay, it's insane. But Washington does many insane things and has over the years. I have no defense or explanation for why you and I are spending money on Ukraine. I have no answer at all. Washington doesn't either, but they're doing it. And they're spending our money on crazy things. Insane. I like your word, insane. Yes. I think if you gave people a test for insanity, we would not have many elections in America because most of the people who would try to run wouldn't be allowed to run because they should be in a home somewhere. But they're spending your money and mine on these crazy things.
Yeah, you essentially have these insane people with nukes and tanks and aircraft carriers and guns, and That's all they seem to know. Whereas, I've spoken to a couple people about this, including the likes of Alistair McLeod, et cetera. Couldn't our couldn't the hegemon be essentially dismantled with the advent of like a gold standard of some sort, whether it be through China or through Russia or maybe through a break settlement currency that could undermine the dollar? Once that unwind happens, I mean, you essentially defang the West, right?
Well, Danny, unfortunately, US dollar is already being undermined. If you look at the numbers, when I look at the numbers, just the numbers for this year alone, they're staggering, absolutely stunning how high the debt is and how high it's going. And I know it can never be paid off. The British went, 100 years ago, Britain was the richest, most powerful country in the world. 50 years later, they were bankrupt. I mean, history shows this is happening to us. And that means that the US dollar is going to come under serious pressure sometime in your lifetime, my lifetime. And we're going to have more and more currency crises. And my problem is, well, first of all, I own a lot of US dollars at the moment. You're probably going to say, well, why do you own the dollars after what you just said? And I will, because many people will look for a safe haven during a crisis, and they think for historic reasons that the dollar is a safe haven. It's not, but people think it is. I hope that I'm smart enough that when it goes up a lot, that I'll sell it. Your question now should be, well, where will you put your money? And I don't have an answer. I
Hmm.
cannot find a new competing currency for the US dollar.
Is
All the ones that you would think would be logical have many basic flaws. So you and I and the world is going to have more serious problems in the next 2 or 3 years. Be worried.
Yeah, it's a complex system. I mean, you put it very succinctly. I mean, it's too complex of a problem to have a solution to. Um, is that why the DXY is moving up with gold, which has never happened before? It's kind of unprecedented. Is this kind of like a safe haven movement where worldwide capital is moving into either number one, gold or the dollar?
Well, I own both. I'm not as smart as the rest of the world, but I own both of those things you talked about. I also own silver. If either of them go down, I hope I'm smart enough to buy more. But when the next serious problem comes, and it looks more and more likely in the near future, when I say the near future, the next year or two, when that happens, everybody historically has fled to gold, silver,
Mm-hmm.
dollars. But if the dollar goes very high this time, I hope I'm smart enough to sell it because I don't see any solution to the problems of the US dollar longer term. And when I say longer term, I'm talking about 2 or 3 years.
Could the U.S. market itself, the U.S. stock market, whether it be the Dow or et cetera, could that act as a safe haven too?
Well, it looks like it is right now. For some reason, the US stock market is making all-time highs, even though the US potentially has problems. So, yes, that's what people are doing, but that's part of the flight to the US dollar. If you're going to buy US dollars, you got to own something. And many people consider stocks, bonds, whatever currencies the safe haven. I know it's not, but as long as people think it is, it is.
Yeah, nothing lasts forever. I mean, you mentioned how with the British pound, eventually it lost its world reserve status, and before that, a number of other currencies. The U.S. dollar is bound to lose its world reserve status. The question is when, not if. My question to you is, how fast could something like this happen? You look at like China's holdings in U.S. Treasuries, and they've been offloading their U.S. Treasury holdings, not selling them precisely, but they've been letting them run to maturity and expire. But this has been occurring over the last decade or so. So this is more of a long term trend, and it seems like it's a slow burn. Is Are we anticipating a slow burn, a slog up until the U.S. dollar loses its supremacy status, or is this kind of like an event that we can anticipate where it happens slowly, then all at once?
Well, most of these things do happen slowly and then all at once, and everybody says, "Oh my gosh, how can you possibly own pounds, British pounds, in the last crisis?" But and many people did, but then it became impossible to own British pounds. I mean, I can remember friends who want to go to Europe even, they couldn't take more than 50 pounds to go on an international trip because things were so serious. That has always happened during currency crises as countries have lost their currency status. And I repeat, I look at the numbers and I am stunned at the US situation. And I don't like it. I'm an American citizen. My kids are American citizens. But unfortunately, nobody, I mean, you and I are talking about it. That's because I keep on changing the subject, but most people in America could care less. And Washington says, "Oh, don't worry. We'll be okay. We're America." Well, you say it's a slow burn. It is a slow burn, but it's been going on, I guess, technically since about the 1980s. America
Mm.
became a debtor nation for the first time. So for 30 or 40 years, America has been a debtor nation, and it's getting worse every day because we keep spending money we don't have. So yes, it has been a slow burn, 30 or 40 years. But Danny, these things come to an end. They always have. And then, as you point out, suddenly everybody says, "Oh my gosh, do you know that America's in debt? You know, America has huge debt." And they'll all be shouting at each other, "How did this happen? Who did it? You did it. Daddy did it. Somebody did it. These people in Washington did it. No, the people in Washington, no, 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 it's not us. It's not us. It's the foreigners. It's all because of the foreigners." Throughout history, when a country has problems, the first thing the government does is blame the foreigners, no matter what it is, no matter where it is. Nobody wants to say, "Oh, yes, we made a mistake. We fouled things up. We have horrible problems now." No, no, no. They say, "The foreigners. It's those horrible, evil foreigners. That's the problem." And then They make even more stupid laws. They put on exchange controls. They do everything to make it worse. No, you should be worried.
Why
You
is it
don't
that
have
it?
to
Go ahead.
you don't have to be worried today, but you should be cautious and thinking about it.
100%. Why is it that it appears that this shift from a creditor to a debtor nation, it seems like we hit peak America at the end of the collapse of the Soviet Union. America, the West, we were kind of handed this hegemony on a silver platter. I mean, it was handed to us back in the early '90s, late '80s, when the tail end of the Soviet Union, and they've effectively squandered it. And you can kind of make the case that we've been living off of the remnants of that past success up until now. Let's
Well,
say.
I hate to say it, but that's very good insight. What happens to human beings? They say, see, we won. We were right. Everything is okay now. So now we can all have a big, big party, a party for decades. We don't have to worry anymore.
Hmm.
Well, I've read enough history and I know enough about human beings to know that's when you should worry.
So go ahead.
Many markets, if you look at markets, smart traders, successful traders, sell when everybody's wildly happy and enthusiastic
Yeah.
because they know it will change.
Yeah, that does appear like that early to mid '90s period was kind of like peak prosperity in America, peak culture in America. It appears that that was the peak, and ever since then, we've been on a you could say a slow burn down, but it's been 30 years of a slow burn, 30, 40 years of a slow burn. So I mean, it eventually catches up to you when you look back at those times, and it's like, wow, look how far we've come down.
Danny, as recently as 1987, the U.S. was a creditor nation.
Mm-hmm.
That's less than 40 years ago. And since then, we have been spending as fast as we can, spending money we don't have. Somebody's been doing it. So I can add, I can subtract. So I know this does not have a good ending.
Yeah, and I think it also has to do with the quality of the elite, our elites. Now versus then. Say what you want about them. They're good guys or bad guys, whatever the case may be. They're at least competent. You look at Brzezinski, you look at Kissinger. Again, these aren't angels, so to speak, but they were very competent men, very hardened men. You look at our elites today. I mean, they are batshit insane. They have no comprehension of self-preservation, picking wars with nuclear powers and all this other stuff.
Who told you those guys were competent men? The people you mentioned.
On a relative basis.
They told you they were competent men, and you accepted it because the newspaper quoted them. But no, we wouldn't be okay. For a long time, people in Washington have been making these mistakes. We have elected them. We, in our wisdom, have elected them. But back to the point, my point anyway, the U.S. is now a debtor nation. The U.S. is the largest debtor nation in the history of the world. And if you can add and subtract, you will see this cannot continue. The British did it, and in 50 years they were bankrupt. Many countries in history have done it. It has never ended well. Printing money, spending money, borrowing money has never ended well. I wish I could say, hooray, we don't have to worry. We have politicians in Washington. That's why we should worry, because they don't care about you and me, Danny. They don't care about our children. They care about keeping their job. And the way they keep their job is to spend money. You want a new park in your town, Danny? Okay, we'll give you a new park. You want new anything? Okay, Danny, we'll give it to you. Vote for me.
Hey guys, quick pause. I won't take too much of your time, but if you're looking to add into your gold and silver stack, please consider Miles Franklin. More specifically, email them, info@milesfranklin.com, and tell them that Capital Cosmos sent you in the subject line to unlock special pricing that you won't find on the website. In the unlikely event that you don't like the prices, You could always not buy. There's no commitment necessary, but I do recommend Miles Franklin for a number of reasons. The customer support is top notch, the prices are great, and I know the people there. Great people all around. So, with all that said, let's get back to the video. Thanks, guys. So, do you see the inevitability of all this becoming more of a multipolar world where you've got an Eastern Bloc just as powerful as the Western Bloc, or just simply the Eastern Bloc completely take over in supremacy over the Western Bloc, and you go back to having a unipolar world? Except in this case, it's more of a BRICS overlay as opposed to a NATO U.S. Western overlay.
Well, if you by Eastern you mean Asia, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
whether we like it or not, Asia has been rising for a few years now. The creditor nations are in Asia. Asia, though, is building up its own debt now, too. I mean, Japan, you look at Japan, it is staggering. I mean, I love Japan. It's a fantastic country, but it is staggering to me how much debt they have built up. And Danny, the population in Japan has been declining for 15
Mm-hmm.
years. Declining. That's
South
not a
Korea as well.
typo.
Yep.
What?
No, I was saying South Korea as well.
Yeah, no, okay. I was just suggesting to you that there are fundamental problems developing in Asia, which has been rising and is more creditor worthy than the West is. But you're right. Look out the window. I live in Asia. Asia is certainly much more prosperous than most Western nations, but there are huge problems developing here. I repeat that Japan has had a declining population for 15 years. There's no prospect of it changing. They're not having babies, which is their business, not mine, but they don't have immigrants. They have very, very few immigrants. So I don't see the future of Japan, except more and more problems. But if Japan has problems, that means Korea is certainly going to have problems, even if the 38th, if the DMZ opens and there's an open Korea, it's not going to solve the problem. Even China is building up debt. 25 years ago, nobody would lend money to the Chinese, but now even China has debt now. I don't know any country in Asia that doesn't have financial potential financial problems. I live in Singapore, which has been a paragon of virtue, but even Singapore has big debts now. They don't talk about them. Nobody likes to talk about their debt. Washington doesn't talk about the debt. They say everything's great. Be worried. Look out the window, Danny. If you look out the window, you'll be very worried.
Why is it that they're seeing these shrinking populations? Is it tied to the few decade, the 2 or 3 decade long recession that Japan's been in, or is there something else?
Well, if you ask me, yes, the Japanese economy has not been booming. The Japanese stock market previously made its peak in 1989, 1990, and for 35 years, it did nothing. That's because Japan wasn't doing very well. And so people, human beings, are smart enough to know that if things are bad, they don't want to have children. Children are a big responsibility and a big expense. So human beings are smart enough not to have children when things are bad. And that happened in Japan. The Japanese don't have many immigrants, so there's nothing to offset the decline in the birth rate. As I repeat, the birth rate in Japan has been declining for many years, and that leads to problems.
One other thing that Japan is doing is that they're actually selling their treasuries, their U.S. treasuries too, and they're a big. I mean, they're not necessarily China to us. They're not an adversary. They're not a competitor. They're an ally. So if they're selling their treasuries, what does that imply?
Well, one reason they're selling their treasuries is because they're running out of money. The debt is building higher and higher and higher in Japan and has been for several years. They got to get money somewhere. They don't want when the voters come in and say, oh, we need a new road. They don't want to say, go away. They build a new road, but they got to get money, so they sell their treasuries, which is not good for you and me. It's not good for the U.S. It's not even good for them. But we have to face facts. countries in history have gone into decline. I wish it were easy to say, oh, okay, everything's great and everything will be great forever. Wouldn't that be wonderful, Danny? Wouldn't that be fantastic? What a good world we would have. But I don't know any country. As I look around the world, I cannot find any country right now where I can see nothing but well, maybe Uzbekistan. There
Hmm.
are a few countries which are emerging from bad times, but very few. Maybe a couple in Africa, but very, very few in the world.
What other countries, like the small handful of countries out there? What else? What other ones would you say
Well,
are
I own
the
shares
exception?
in Uzbekistan, full disclosure, and hope I'm smart enough to buy more. But I don't know many like Uzbekistan. Uzbekistan was taken over by the communists, by the Russians, after the 20s and became a Soviet satellite state and went into decline. The communists ruined anything, Danny. The Russian communists ruined everything they touched. I will tell you a story. Tamerlane, who was from Uzbekistan, conquered a lot of the world a few hundred years ago, was from Uzbekistan. He's buried there. In his tomb, on his tomb, it says, "Here lies Tamerlane. Anybody who disturbs this tomb will bring chaos to the world." This was
Hmm.
500 or 600 years ago. He was buried there. The communists took over Uzbekistan, and in 1941, the Russian archaeologist went into Tamerlane's tomb to see what was there. That very day, Hitler invaded Russia, and
Hmm.
the Second World War went out of control. So Tamerlane was right. So, Danny, if you go to Uzbekistan, please do not disturb Tamerlane's tomb. Leave it alone. Leave it in peace. But I mean, this has happened many times in history. Uzbekistan is on the rise again. It has lots of natural resources, lots of man-made resources, but everybody builds up debt eventually. I own Uzbek stocks again, I want to repeat, but I don't know many countries in the world where I would like to buy shares in 2024, 2025.
Right. I want to shift our conversation over to energy. I want to get your thoughts on the energy market right now. We did mention that the oil market doesn't appear to be getting much traction, um, given all the geopolitical risk out there. But I want to get your sense on the nat gas market. What do you think of the current nat gas price action?
Well, you and I both know that the price of natural gas is low by historical standards. Uh, I mean, natural gas in history has sold much, much higher, and it will again, if you ask me. But so I'm not long natural gas, uh, except as part of an index or something. But no, I'd rather own natural gas than be shorted. So don't short natural gas.
What about coal?
COAL?
Hmm.
Well, sure. I mean, it's a hydrocarbon. People are down on hydrocarbons now, but when you go in and you flip the light switch, you want the lights to come on. So people are not going to be so agitated about coal someday when the lights don't go on. Everybody's going to call their congressman and say, "Where are my lights?" And the congressman's going to say, "Start mining coal some more." I mean,
Uranium. What do you think? Go ahead.
we're all selfish human beings. We all want an easy, good life. I want an easy life.
that's that's the tale of history. It's if you just follow groups as self interest, you can predict where conflict arises because it all traces back to self interest.
Well, you're exactly right. We're all human beings, and we've all been human beings for a few hundred years, 1,000 years. We all want the easy way.
What do you think of the current uranium price? Uranium appears to be getting a bid, at least on the mining stock side. What do you think of uranium?
Well, I own one uranium stock, which I have for a while. So, no, I think I see. demand for uranium will continue to grow and the supply is not booming. So, no, I own it. Who knows if I'm right, but I do own it.
Gotcha. Well, before I let you go, Jim, I want to get your thoughts on the presidential election. Um, do you see any difference in outcomes between the two candidates? More specifically, what groups and what outcomes what groups would benefit the most given each candidate's positions? And as well, what would be the outcome, economic, market wise, foreign policy wise, between the two?
Well, my first observation is we will have an election. I hope if we don't have an election, we got serious, serious problem. So we will have an election, which is good news. Considering what's happened in other countries over history, sometimes things get so bad they don't have elections. They call it an emergency.
Hmm.
Now, one of them will win, either Trump or Harris. I will not vote for either of them. I'll tell you, Danny, something of which I'm very proud. I've always voted ever since I've turned 21, but I have never voted for a winner. You look back at the people who've won the presidency in my lifetime, you'll say, how did you know? You didn't vote for Richard Nixon? Why not? Every one of them. I am proud to say I have never voted for a winner
You are a
because
true
I've always,
contrarian.
but
I said you're a true contrarian.
yeah, well, or maybe I'm even smart. I doubt if I'm smart, but maybe it's just that I'm a contrarian. But none of them have ever appealed enough to me that I would vote for them. So, having said that, I will vote in November. I will not, I think I've already voted actually by mail because I live abroad. Um, one of them will win. Is it good for America? No. It's good for their friends. If you know who Mr. Trump's friends are or Mrs. Harris's friends, you can buy their shares because one of them is going to win. And whatever they do, they're going to make sure their friends are happy. So if you can figure out who their friends are, you will be happy too. If you invest in their friends. But that's about the only thing I can see that's going to be good from this election or previous elections. I'll
Do
repeat.
you see any specific groups benefiting more than others, given in a Trump win or a Kamala win?
Uh, Trump has friends, donors, contributors. So does Harris. Both of them have contributors. And their contributors will give them money and expect to get something in return. You know, I know human beings. If they contribute to a winning president, they expect something in return and they will get something in return. So you figure out who their friends are and you can make a lot of money. I'm not endorsing it. I'm not endorsing their friends. I'm just telling you how the system works. And if you want to invest, invest in their friends.
All right.
I would not vote for either one of them. I want to repeat, Danny. I would not vote for either one of them. I would not vote for either one of them. So, but be worried, or at least I'm worried, because I know they're both going to make it worse.
mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. What is your outlook for the United States?
Well, I will repeat, the United States is the largest debtor nation in the history of the world, and it's going higher and higher. And I look back at previous countries that have gotten in this situation. It's ultimately led to problems in the financial markets. It's ultimately led to currency problems, debt problems, and the countries go into decline. I mean, this is a simple lesson of history. Now, in Washington, they will say, don't worry, it's different this time. We have things under control. As you well know, Danny, whenever you hear the words, it's different this time, leave the room. Leave the room as fast as you can, because it's never different this time. Debts, bankruptcy always occur.
Yep. It's
I
the
don't say
tap.
this with any pleasure. I'm just telling you facts. I have to live my life in a world, and I have to live the world as it is, not as I would like it to be.
Yeah, you can ignore reality, but you can't ignore the consequences of ignoring reality. So,
Well said. Well said. I wish I could. I wish I could close the one and say, don't worry. I've been around long enough to know close the window if you want to, but you better worry.
Yeah, but a few people have that trade. Most people would rather just ignore reality or delude themselves into believing in things that may or may not be true, just to kind of satiate some of that anxiety.
Wouldn't it be easy if that's all we had to do was
You know,
ignore reality?
but
Wow.
it doesn't stop the public. I mean, most people out there they still want to believe. So
I know. And the politicians, if somebody does raise the issue of the debt, the politicians will say, don't worry. This is Washington. We're Americans and it's no problem. I hope. I hope. That's never been correct, but I hope.
yep. Well, hey Jim, it's been a pleasure having you on. I think we covered a whole host of things. Is there anything else you want to talk about before we close out?
Well, I mean, listen, I am not optimistic about the American stock market. I guess I've made that clear. Uh, I don't like what I see happening. Stocks are making all-time highs in most of the world, by the way. Nearly everywhere, stocks are making all-time highs. Even China now has started booming. So, Danny, when everybody's making all-time highs and everybody's happy, it has usually been a signal that people should be worried and cautious. So I would just suggest to people, you can do what you want, and maybe everything is okay, and maybe you're going to make a fortune in the investment markets. But historically, that has been a time to be worried and ask questions. I urge you to be worried and ask questions.
For sure, for sure. If there ever was a time, it's now. Well, Jim, go ahead and plug. If is there anything you want to plug? Is there a website that you want to
No, Danny,
push people towards?
I don't have anything to sell. I wish I did. I wish I was smart enough to have something to sell, but no, I'm a simple person. I'm just trying to stay solvent.
All right, excellent. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Jim. It's been a real pleasure. And if you enjoyed this content, please give us a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, if you're getting value out of videos like this. If you agreed with Jim, go ahead and comment "Go Jim Go" in the comment section. If you disagreed with anything, go ahead and let me know what you disagreed on. I do read the comments, guys. I may not respond to them, but I do read them. And finally, if you'd like to take this experience up a notch, check out our Substack, capitalcosm.substack.com. Link to that is down below in the description box, as well as the pinned comment. You get access to exclusive content that you won't find on YouTube. You also get early access to all of my interviews before the YouTube audience does. You get a chance to ask questions to my future guests. You get to recommend me future guests. So a whole host of different perks that you won't find on here. If you want to get the next level experience, check out capitalcosm.substack.com. And finally, thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next episode. Bye, guys.
Thank you, Danny. Bye bye.